Overcoming asset management hurdles can be exhausting. Justin Fraser is joining me today, and he is going to share some real hard knocks that he has experienced while he has grown his asset management experience. We're talking contractors that were stealing from him, finding the right property management company to help you as you're doing heavy lifts. He covers what it's like when you're undercapitalized for a project. He does not leave anything unearthed, and you are guaranteed to walk away going, oh my gosh, he's still in multifamily. And he's not just in it, he's rocking it, doing a rock star job. So the power of a team, the power of humility, the power of communication and understanding who you're working with and how to vet people. You don't want to miss a single moment of this, because he is going to tell you everything you need to know. I will leave you with that. Hey guys, welcome back to Ask Me How I Know. I am so excited to have Justin on the show today because he works in a part of multifamily that is so underserved and is really the backbone to make our business plans come to life. And oh my gosh, Justin, I can't even wait for you to this is going to be a dynamite conversation. That's all I know from what we've already discussed. So welcome to Ask Me How I Know.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
I'm glad you're excited, because I'm excited. And we were just talking about how sometimes we interview people and they might not be as excited. So we're both bringing the excitement today.
Well, I think when you interview another podcaster, like, as a host, like you have to bring the energy. So I'm here for it. I've got the energy. You've got energy. Let's see where this goes. I'm excited.
I'm not going to lie. I had a third of a cherry Pepsi before coming in to record.
And amped you up. You ready to go?
Yeah, we're ready.
All right.
We're so ready.
That's good.
So here's a fun fact that I don't know if you remember, and the audience definitely doesn't know this, but we met when I convinced my husband that, like, this is it. I'm going into multifamily. This has to be. I drank the Kool-Aid, and I said, I'm not missing another seminar. And he's like, well, I'll come with you. And that's where I met you at a real estate guys seminar.
I remember. Yes, at the bar, I think, is actually where we first met. Yes, we had a great conversation that night. Great networking. That was an awesome conference. I missed the days of going to conferences, honestly, and traveling.
Oh, me too.
Look back on those finally, because I wouldn't have met someone like you. So I want to meet more people. And now it's all LinkedIn and Zoom, and that's fine. But let's get back to it. I want to get back to it.
I can't wait. You know what I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to meeting all the people I've now connected with throughout the pandemic in person. I'm just thinking there just needs to be one central place. Everybody come, let's show up, because it's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm all about it. Let me know when and where. I will be there.
Awesome. I think that sounds great.
All right.
But you know what else sounds great is asset management. Everybody thinks it's all super sexy to get like this multifamily asset. And they're like, yes, I'm involved in multifamily. I have 500 doors, blah, blah, blah. And then they don't even know what they're doing. So tell us a little bit about what you do, because I think some people don't even know what asset management is. Like legitimately, they just have this idea in their head, and it's like, so that's not reality.
Right. So asset management, when you have, let's say, a single family house that you're renting out, is very overlapped with property management, right? Pretty much if you own the property, you're self-managing, you're sort of making the strategic decisions and you're managing the property. But as the properties get larger, that the central, it separates a little bit. Asset management and property management start to separate. And by the time you get to properties like what I manage, 100, 200, 300 unit properties, there's a very distinct difference. And so that's the first thing, is most people think asset management is property management, and it absolutely is not. They work hand in hand, but asset manager is going to set the strategy and the business plan and then work to execute that business plan for the property. So on a large multifamily, we'll have an underwriter. Asset manager could do the underwriting, maybe not. On my team, we have an underwriter. He writes the business plan, right? And he puts it into the formulas and the calculations and says, hey, this is what I think we can do. But he and I work very closely on that together, because what he's putting into the spreadsheet has to be grounded in reality. And so the asset manager brings that experience and grounding of reality back to the numbers and the spreadsheet and says, well, actually, I can't turn 100 units in 1 month, right? That's not physically possible, you know? And my underwriter knows better, but that's an extreme example, but there are very real life scenarios that impact the underwriting, and especially lately with COVID, but even just time, money availability, bank draws. I mean, you have to factor all these things that go into how fast we can renovate and what that business plan actually looks like. So the asset manager gets involved even in the underwriting stage. And then once we close, has to manage that project, manage the business plan, making sure that the construction is running well if you're doing a renovation program, making sure that the property manager is performing, hiring, firing property managers as part of it. And really, at the end of the day, the asset manager is responsible back to the investors and the general partnership and the limited partners to say, look, we are doing what we said we're going to do. We all bought in on this vision. We all said we're going to go buy this property and do all these great things and spend money here and there. The asset manager has to get that done.
There's so much pressure on asset managers. How do you deal with the pressure? Because seriously, the play cannot be executed without you running it. Like quarterback, underwriter, they give you the ball, the capital raisers give you the money, like they hand everything over to you. And now you have to go score. Like how do you manage that pressure?
The pressure, I think in the beginning got to me a little bit as far as like, there's all these tenants and all these people and all these millions of dollars. Eventually you get used to it. And I build systems and processes so that I know I have checkpoints and I know how I'm looking at the right data and I know that I'm in good hands. So the people that we hire, the companies that we hire are all top quality. The check-ins that we do, the amount of times we visit the property, even though we have the greatest property managers, I've got to check them. And I know so we build these checks and balances into the process and the system. And so, we've learned a lot, sort of the hard way in how we hire property managers, and just everything we do about asset management. But now I really feel confident that if something goes wrong, and they always do, every day something goes wrong, but most of the things that go wrong are out of my control. So I can prepare, we can have the right people in place. And I know if there's a problem with one of our properties, that I have the right team that can remedy it, that we can fix it, right? And we're well capitalized enough that we can come in case of emergency. And so we underwrite deals more efficiently. We bring more capital to our projects, and we can sort of weather a storm. Like, let's say a global pandemic hits. We can't
do that.
Right. Not that we planned for that, but the way we underwrite our deals, the way we plan on properties, I have the right people in place and the right support to sort of weather it and push through it. So I don't try to get too caught up in the pressure of it, because I know that we can find a solution and work our way through it.
That's fantastic. I'm going to go back to the beginning of what you were saying, and that is like basically keeping tabs, not babysitting, but really like, kind of babysitting, all the people along the way, all the service members, your property manager, your landscapers, like just making sure everybody is doing what they should. Because guess what? I haven't found a time in life that a little bit of accountability has not served people well. Like, too much accountability will stifle a person, but the right level of accountability keeps everybody on their A game.
Absolutely. And something I do struggle with is, micromanagement, right? I live in New Jersey. We have now 1,000 units and, 6-7 apartment complexes. And I don't really have the bandwidth to be micromanaging, and I don't want to be micromanaging because I'm not a property manager. But I have to be informed enough, and I have to know that I'm holding everyone on my teams accountable. And I call them my teams, even though they're technically third-party companies that we're hiring. We're all on the same team, and we all are working towards the same goal. So we start that by, like, we take on a new asset. We have a business plan that I wrote, that my underwriter collaborated on, and I give that to my property management company. I say, this is our plan for this property, and we want their buy-in. these are the rents we want to get. This is how fast we're going to move forward with construction. This is the type of owner we want to be. We're not slumlords. We invest in the community. We put in playgrounds and pools and community features, and we have tenant events, right? And so we want a property manager that's on board with that sort of approach, where we're not just trying to skimp by and wring the tenants for every last dollar that we can get out of them without providing service and quality back to them. So we take care of safety. Yeah.
I was just going to interject. This is one thing
Okay.
that one facet of what I love about what you do, you know, like what you bring to the table, because it really is more than just, oh, we have this place and people rent it and we get great returns. It's like, what are you providing to the residents and to the community and to the world at large, just by nature of having a really exceptional product to offer?
Yeah. And that's actually really important, because a happy tenant is going to refer their friends, and they're going to stay longer. And frankly, they're going to be okay with a $20 rent bump or a $30 rent bump on an annual basis, because they love living there. And so we actually go in our business plan, we talk about the turnaround of the property. Where are we investing? Not just in units, and are we redoing the bathrooms and kitchens? And that's fine. And we do all of that, of course. But what amenities are we putting in? What tenant programs are we putting in? How often do we expect tenant events to happen? You know, give backs, pizza parties, whatever kind of, you know, pull up the hot dog cart, right? We do all these kind of things for our tenants because we want them to feel like they're part of something bigger, part of a community, right? We just spent, I don't know, almost $100,000 at one of our properties with soccer fields and playgrounds and grilling stations and sunshades, and that goes a long way. That property, by the way, 100% full, right? I can't raise rents high enough on that
Is there
property.
a wait list on that one, by the way?
So we've been turning units. So, but as soon as we turn them, it fills up, right? And because people love it there, they love it there, and we're leading the market in rents because we provide the best service there, and that's fine. And we actually usually don't try to lead the market in rents, but in that property, everything sort of lined up and worked well, and you know, we're crushing it there. So we have to build that into every property that we do. We have to build in the tenant amenities, but also bigger things like safety and security is another big thing. We brighten up every single property that we buy. We put extra lights on the outside, in the breezeways, in front of every door, because a tenant has to feel safe in their home and in their community, right? If it's a property that we inherited with crime, we will pay for extra police patrols. And we are doing that on one of our properties right now. And that's fine. And that's part of it. And we build that in because we need our tenants to feel part of that bigger community, feel safe. So an asset manager, you know, is not just, you know, looking at the numbers on the page, like you said, managing the property manager, but saying, no, we want a manager that's going to invest in these things with us. And then coming with the money and the support behind it, and being okay with the fact that it's going to cost a little bit more.
And sometimes a lot more. Now, Justin, you saw me, and if people are watching on YouTube, then they saw me. I was like looking down. There is a book that just came across my plate yesterday. I was trying to find it, but it has to do with this whole experience and creating experiences for people. And I was, you know, on a call with somebody, and they mentioned this book, and it's within my wheelhouse of impact investing, and definitely within asset management. And what you're trying to accomplish is that by creating these experiences for people, and that connection, we're human beings and we are wired to be connected. And when we meet that need for our residents, we provide something far more powerful.
I totally agree. I like to think about, you know, we secret shop our properties, and we like to think about the tenant experience from the time they call through the first walk into the door to, you know, how they appear when they walk the model unit, who's walking with them, what is that process like, the time they sign their paperwork, just every step along the way and then of course, when they are tenants, how are they getting communicated to? And it's something that we are doing, but I also think that we could do a lot better. But, you know, in some of our properties, we send out monthly newsletters to the tenants, you know, hey, here's, you know, some important dates to remember. Of course, you know, rent's due on the 1st, late on the 5th, but, you know, it's also Valentine's Day, and here's this cool, you know, St. Patrick's Day is coming, and whatever, you know, we try to give like some local news or just other things in the newsletter that people might be interested in. But it's more just about constant communicating with the tenants and every touch point. But what is that, to your point on the experience, what is that experience like? Because at the end of the day, The tenants are how we make our money, right? And so we have to take care of our tenants. And we want to think about every touch point along the way to make, and that goes for, I'm in C-class value add properties, and a lot of people think, well, that's maybe lower to the bottom of the barrel, but every tenant deserves, a great experience. And no matter what class they are, they need to have a property they feel safe in, and they need to have an awesome experience. And like I said, it costs some upfront, but that comes back in referrals, in longer stays, and in the rent bumps that we get later on.
I also think that that it pays out within the community, because regardless of somebody's income status, and I am confident that you agree with this, like regardless of somebody's income status, it's this respect for humanity and respect for wherever somebody is, and honoring, hey, well, you're just as important as somebody in an A class, like it doesn't matter. You deserve this great experience, and you're still paying rent, and we can create this for you.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
I love it. So you have done so much. You have vast experience, and a lot of people right now are steering clear of heavy lifts. They're kind of like, oh, economy, we don't want to jump into heavy lifts right now. And there are a lot of other reasons why, replacement costs, well, I'll just rebuild it. Like you and I hear it all. So, but you have tackled heavy lifts, and I'm wondering what your experience has been like that as an asset manager. What would you say? Ask me how I know other asset managers just getting into this, or, like ready to tackle this. Here's what you need to know.
My goodness, there's so many ways to go with that. But for the heavy lifts, I would say, being well capitalized is the first thing. Like, make sure you have more than enough money than what you think. And if you have, is that the way you want to go with this?
Sure. Yeah. No. Trust me. we're both talkers, so we'll.
Okay.
We'll
I saw your reaction, so I want to make sure.
I'm like, wait. I want to ask a question about that already.
Oh, okay. Okay, we build a scope of work in the beginning, even before we buy the property. And so we've got quotes for unit renovations and amenities and this and that. And we do like a triple check, right? I want multiple bids from multiple contractors. I want multiple vendors, suppliers, material suppliers. If I'm going to do a pool, I want 3 different approaches to that pool and 3 different bids on it. And I want to have a really, really good idea. And then not only am I going to put in like some extra money, I'm then going to add a very healthy contingency on top, because things go wrong. And the easiest way to run into problems on the heavy value add stuff is to not have enough money. Because if you get in there and you realize that every single unit has a busted water heater that you were not planning on, and you've got 300 units in there, that is a lot of money that you're going to have to invest in that property. So you need to be able to withstand a few hits like that, right?
So how much what's your personal buffer when you're working with your underwriter and you guys are collaborating on creating this plan to execute?
Yeah. So we'll do on a few different levels. So let's say we're looking at a unit scope. We'll say, okay, floors are good, but let's plan on, maybe counters and painting the cabinets. We'll come up with our budget. And then I'll say, okay, now we call this the something cool factor. And because usually I want to do something cool in our units. And so like our latest project is a really awesome, like deep, huge, like farmhouse sink, right? And at the end of the day, it's costing us maybe like $70 more than a regular sink, but people walk into the unit like, oh, that's a cool sink, right?
They're so hip right now.
Totally,
they're on
right?
point. Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, for the extra $70. So usually it's like $200, $300. We'll say, the unit scope plus the something cool factor, right? And so we don't even always know what that is right away. But so this property ended up being this. Sometimes it's like, we upgrade the lighting, or we go with the USB outlets in the kitchen or something, like just something cool that tenants might be able to point to and say, yeah, that's pretty awesome. They might see in a B or an A type property, but we can bring a little taste of that into the C-class properties. So we add a little bit of a buffer on the unit side, and then we'll also put together like maybe projects. So it's like, we know that we have to do, project A through F. But project G, which might be, maybe we do want to paint the exterior of this outside, or maybe we want to take down some of these trees. We don't really know. We don't have to do it. But if it's a maybe project, let's put it on. Right. And so we put it into the scope. And so that gives me some flexibility where I'm planning on that ahead of time. It's a maybe, it's not necessary, but if we can make the numbers work, I'm going to put that in my budget, right? So we have a few extra type projects that we'd like to do. And then on top of that, we'll put, a 10% contingency on top of everything. So I've got a little bit of extra room in my units. I've got a little bit of extra sort of side projects, and then I've got a nice big 10% bubble over all of that. That helps them weather the storm.
Okay, so you're finding slam dunk deals because in order to accomplish that and still maintain, to provide for the residents and the investors, you're finding some slick deals.
It takes, right now it's very hard to find a good deal, the right deal. We went from June of 2019 till October of 2020 before purchasing a major property. We picked up a 48 in the middle of that, but that was a big gap over a year between properties. And so we want to do it right. It makes my job easier because I have been on projects where we did not have enough money, and you got to wish and hope that you get the right rent and that the contractor comes in under, and you're like hoping that nothing breaks and there's not a leak tomorrow, and there's always going to be a leak, and the bid's always going to come in over. And when you need things to line up the right way, they are never going to do that. You have to plan for that punch in the mouth. So if we build it in ahead of time, we'll miss out on deals, and that's okay. I'd rather make sure we're buying the right deal for the right price. You do have to find the balance, because then sometimes the underwriter will come back, well, if we do all of that, then, we can offer, 40% of asking. Okay, that's not going to work for us. But maybe we do scale back some of those maybe projects, right? We can get away with this or that. And so we'll kind of ebb and flow the scale, and we'll look back at the competitive properties, and okay, maybe we don't need granite, or we don't need the black appliances. We could do the white appliances, and we sort of fine tune. And it is a negotiation and a fine tuning, but I'd rather be healthy, and I'd rather miss the deal and have enough CapEx in the deals that we do.
Holy cow. So you've experienced it. We can all ask Justin how he knows. He has had some maybe sleepless nights, sweating bullets over like, oh my gosh. So what do you do to come out of that? How did you find, we'll just start with okay, we're in a situation. It's not the best situation. We're undercapitalized for this situation. Now what? Because I think you might agree with me, we might have some friends that are going to be facing this, over the next few years. So what do they do? Pro tip from Justin.
Pro tip is talk to people you trust, and talk to people who are more experienced than you, because every scenario is going to be unique. Every property is unique, and the situation that you're in with your debt, with who's paying, who's not paying, with demands from the market, and your property manager and contractors who are calling you for bills that are past due. I've been in some tough situations, and when you're feeling hopeless and you don't really see the way out, as an asset manager, it's very easy to sort of like close your eyes and not want to talk to anybody about it, because you feel like maybe I'm failing. And I've been there, and I freely admit that. And I've talked about that before, where I've had some really tough nights, as you said, but there's always a way out. It may not be the ideal way, but there are going to be ways out. And so you have to talk to those who have gone through it. And so if it's, we need more cash, well, if you're syndicating a deal, there is always a provision to get more cash through a cash call. It's not something we want to do, and thankfully we've never done, but that is an option, sort of the nuclear option, right? But maybe there's some other options. Maybe we have some unsold shares and we can bring in some more cash that way. Or maybe we can bring in another debt, or we can get creative, sell off a piece of the property. Like whatever there is, there could be ways out that you're just not thinking of, because you are solely focused and you have tunnel vision on the problem. But I can't tell you how many times I've been talking to the people I trust, either on my team, even like limited partners. We don't necessarily like hold the town hall, but we have some limited partners that have a lot of cash with us, and we will go to them and say, hey, look, we're going through this together, and we want to be transparent, and we're looking for some advice or some guidance, or we know that you've been on other projects. And so it's tough to admit and sort of open that book up and say, look, we're in a tough spot here. But when you remember that you're all on the same team and you all want the same result, then you're going to get some advice that'll help you out of the situation.
So what? Okay. So, because wow, I know whenever I've, if somebody is listening and you think that you have never dropped a ball or fumbled or anything like that, then stop listening now. You're not my listener. You're not part of my audience.
Right.
Because every one of us has, I mean, like, there are times where we all have those moments where we've messed up, and maybe it's by no fault of our own, but we have the curveball and we're just like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. No, everybody has messed up, straight up messed up. But then we also get the curveballs. So,
Yeah, of course.
and so like that humility that's required to be able to go and seek help. So sometimes we think that people are going to respond a particular way because we're in our own mind, thinking between our ears, and it's not really safe sometimes. And so, I'm wondering, what were the responses? Like, when you've done that, how did LPs respond? How did your team respond? What was?
It's almost always never what I have in my head. Like
Yes.
what I'm thinking, the response is going to be, and when I'm sweating at 2:00 in the morning.
Justin, how could you do this? We're never working with you again.
It's never, ever that. And so, I mean, I also work with some amazing people, and that's why I work with them. But it's always constructive, and they always have different perspective. And, well, have you thought about this? Yeah, I thought about this and I tried this. Well, what about trying that? Or I heard, or you know what, my buddy just went through something similar. Let me give him a call, right? There's always another solution. And we work in this industry, we work with creative problem solvers. No matter how you're involved in multifamily, you have to be a creative problem solver. And so I've just always been blown away when you get into trouble. The key is to lay it on the line and explain what's happening. As embarrassing and as hard as that might be, but most people don't the people you want to work with, I'll say, don't necessarily get caught up in pointing fingers. And because if you have the protocols in place in the process and you're managing the property, unless you just flat out stopped taking calls and walked away from the property, you're probably doing something in the goal of bettering the property. So if you are doing what you can, then people recognize that. And so they want to help you, and especially if they're financially vested in the property. But even not, there's such a great support group of people like you and other podcasters and people on LinkedIn and other investors and conferences. Like, people always want to help. And so I have a strong network of people that I can rely on as well. And a lot of times it's just a different perspective, and it sort of allows you to breathe a little bit. And they give you a response of trying different things. And sometimes it's just talking it out. And even if they have no new ideas, sometimes hearing from them what you've tried helps you think of a different response or a different idea. And it's just like having it verbally out there instead of being in your head can sometimes help you find the right solution.
I'm huge on that. I'm huge about speaking things aloud. It kind of diffuses things and it gives you a little more clarity, because when you articulate it or when you write something down, having to take it out of the cloud that's in your head and put it into like formed sentences in some way really diffuses it, and it becomes more manageable instantly.
I totally agree. Just saying the words, like sometimes I'll be mid-thought, like, oh wait, okay, let's try this. You know what I mean? Like, I just got half the sentence out of my mouth and I realized it. So it's important to do that. Even if you're talking to yourself, like, open a Zoom meeting and just look at yourself on Zoom and talk it out with yourself sometimes.
That's actually not a bad idea. That's another pro tip for everybody today. Zoom is going to just skyrocket now.
Absolutely.
A little bit more. All right. So we're in the middle of heavy lift. My listeners we're pretending right now. They're in the middle of a heavy lift. They're, intermediate investors. So they've done some light value add. They have a little bit of experience, but they haven't done the full on heavy. And you have, and they're concerned about their contractors, and they want to keep everybody going. How do you keep the pace and the momentum?
Yeah. There's a few tips there. At first, it starts with who is managing these contractors. For us, we always use third-party property management. And the property managers at the level that we're investing at, 200, 300 unit type properties, generally usually have some sort of performance improvement property improvement person, or not necessarily a contractor, but someone that you can can lead the construction effort from the property management side, and we compensate them for that, sort of like a GC, but they're part of the property management team. And so on all of our properties, it's different. Like every property manager does it slightly different, but generally there's one person that you can point to that is responsible. So who's responsible from the property management side? And that's the person that you want to work with in setting policies and all of that. So the first on the heavy lifts is to be clean with your financials. Okay, because it's very easy for money to get lost and to not know what was paid for and what was that payment for and why did we send money and did we put the deposit on there and when is this due? Like you do 3 unit renovations and you're lost already if you don't have good record keeping. So we do, and it doesn't have to be a very fancy software. We have looked at the very fancy softwares and tried them. But it all usually comes back to like Excel and some Word documents for us. And we create purchase orders. And a purchase order for me is just me saying, I approve this work to be done. So I will say, okay, it's going to be unit 1A, and I've got $300 for this countertop, and I've got $700 for the painters and $500 for the materials. Go. Right. And that's me. Then I'll send it off to that person at the property management company that's responsible and say, okay, this is your formal approval to start this work. That way they know I reviewed it. I know I've reviewed it, right? My bookkeeper knows I reviewed it. There's a paper trail, and then the property manager can get that process started. In addition, that triggers a workflow where we then send the money for the deposit. And so we have a separate construction account for a CapEx account at the property that the property manager sort of can write checks out of, but it's not commingled with our operations account. We've done that in the past as well, and that's very confusing. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, you see, Julie's like, oh wait, I have to ask. So I have to say, like, so how do you know? Like, what happened? What have you experienced that led you to really refine systems? Because this will help the audience a lot.
In the past, we've had property managers that want to run everything out of the same account, operations and construction. We treat operations and CapEx as totally separate right now, bookkeeping wise and cash wise, because in the past we've had them mingled. And so when I look at my bank statement and I see there's $100,000 in the operations account, I think, man, I should be able to pull that back from the property manager, take all that profit. But what I don't realize is I just sent them $50,000 for this next batch of work that we're doing, and it's all in the same account. It's like, well, what money is what? What money came from the profit of the property? Do I owe money for the property? I mean, we were up and down, right? So it was in a time where the property, we were in the early stage of the renovation, and some months we maybe made like $2,000. Other months we lost $10,000 just based on occupancy, and the expenses were going up. And so it's like, well, if I lost $10,000, but now there's more money in my account, it looks like I'm doing well because there's cash in the bank, but I sent that from my construction account, and it's like a total mess. Right. And so then to unwind all of that and figure out what money is what and belongs where and what's owed. The worst is then when it's like, well, we didn't realize we sent the money, but we're counting that as profit from the operations. And now that contractor's calling, wondering where their $20,000 is, and it's no longer there, So we've had some problems where it's like, we almost had to pay for things twice because we thought we had paid the contractor. The money went like this: from my account to the operations account to the contractor. Right, from the property manager paid the contractor. I thought the contractor was paid already. The property manager had not written that check yet. So on our side, it looked like we had $20,000 more than when we actually had. And so that sort of gave us the red flag of like, okay, we don't want to be sending $20,000 when we thought we were and we had already like told people like, oh, we made $20,000 more than we thought. We were like popping champagne, like, hey, look how great we're doing. And wait a minute,
they're gonna love us.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, we're on the right track. And then it's like, oh wait, yeah, we didn't pay that contractor $20,000. Pop those balloons, right? We're no longer celebrating.
Big time.
So keeping everything separate and clean and organized really helps. The purchase order thing, I'll just tell you, it got away from us in the beginning where we were letting on one of our properties, our maintenance guy, sort of lead maintenance guy, just run the construction aspect. That property management company did not have someone sort of senior in that GC type role. So just the site level maintenance guy. And that was a big mistake for us, because site level maintenance guys are really good at site level maintenance, not at running big construction projects or renovation projects. And so he basically did not know what to do with all the cash we were sending him, and contractors weren't getting paid, invoices weren't clean. We didn't know where supplies were. We didn't know what had been ordered, how many appliance sets we had. Things were just incredibly disorganized, and we didn't know what else we were going to owe, which was the scariest thing. It's like the property has some supplies of which we don't exactly know where they are, but we owe vendors some money, and we don't know exactly how much. And so we had to put some lockdown on the flow of construction funds, and that's where we rolled out this purchase order process, where he says, I have to say yes to every individual project so that we know how much is being accounted for and how much we're spending.
Okay, so we got to backtrack.
Okay.
How did you even figure that out, Justin? Seriously, how is it like, this guy's going along and you're talking, you're communicating, but really to unravel all of that?
Well, at some point we got to the property and we're just asking the right questions of, where are our materials? That was the first thing. Like, oh, you don't know how much material we have on site and how much is coming. That's a problem. And then how much have we spent? Well, there's no clear reporting on that. And, okay, well, what do we still have to spend? Okay, we don't really know what we still have to spend. And so basically no answers to anything sort of spurred this. And so we thought, sort of was like a house of cards, where for a while we were in a good shape and we thought we were good, and the reports were not as detailed as they are now, but we were letting things go by word of mouth from this guy telling us that he had things covered and things were moving and vendors were being paid. But then when you actually go back and do that accounting, and honestly, I had a contractor call me, found my number, who I had never spoken to before, but somehow found the information. Maybe this guy gave it, I don't know. But he called and said, I've been working on your property for months and you haven't paid me. And that caused me to be like, well, I thought you were getting paid. This guy's telling me you're being paid. So what's happening? And so that sort of started unraveling everything, where we realized that no, people were not getting paid, but the guy didn't even know that people, he just wasn't suited in that skill set to be paying people properly and getting that process going. So that's how I know.
Right. And then I think that's very gracious of you also, because really, if something's not in somebody's skill set, and really vetting somebody to make sure that they're doing a job that's in their wheelhouse, because the guy didn't know, he's in over his head.
Yep.
And he could have come up earlier. And well, actually, he probably didn't even know it was a problem. It's like, well, this is how I run my own finances. Why not?
I mean, it's probably true. I mean, he's, it's easy to blame other people. But as I think I mentioned earlier in the show, the asset manager is responsible for everything. You're responsible for executing that plan, including where the money's going and who's handling your money. And so ultimately, it comes back to me not having the right people in place. And so that's actually a really core thing that we look for now, is not only the property management company, but who are they hiring, who's representing us, who's handling our money, who's the face, who's interacting with tenants, who's working in the units. Very, very important, top to bottom. And so, you have to have the right person that has the right skill set for that kind of work, especially when you're talking about millions of dollars of renovation money. That's really important.
I have millions.
I
just, when you're a certain age, you just have to. It takes you back in time.
Absolutely.
Okay. So they have not heard this story. You gave me a snippet, I got the teaser, and I'm like, we have to hear the story. So you have this project, and now appliance circuits are going missing. And this story, I'm hoping, can also serve as a cautionary tale in how, just another way to how to know what your people are actually doing.
Yeah.
So all right. I'll leave it at that and let you go. Take it away, Justin.
Absolutely. So you have to visit your properties as often as possible is really the punchline. But the how I know you have to visit your properties, I'll tell you, is that we had a maintenance man working at one of our properties, and he was coincidentally same person I just spoke about. So I give him credit for before, but this was over the line, and why he's no longer working with us. But so he's running our renovations for us, and we think things are going fine. And eventually there's some issues where he gets let go. I'll just leave it at that. But so he gets let go, and we start to find out sort of through the people that are left some of the fun things that he was doing behind our back and behind the management company's back. So first thing, I'm at the property, and a guy shows up in a pickup truck and says, "Hey, y'all got any more of those appliances for me?" And I look at the site manager like, "What do you mean? Like, what's this guy talking about asking us for appliances?" And he says, "Oh yeah, I've been coming by for months, and you guys just keep having appliance sets, and I'm buying them from you." And I'm like, "No, that's not in our business plan." Like, I'm looking at the site manager, and she's looking at me, and nobody knew what was happening. So I go talk to the guy. Yeah, this guy was in our we had like, I don't know, 50, 60 units that we had to renovate. And so they were all vacant. And so this guy thinking, well, those units are vacant, no one's using the appliances that are in there. So he's selling these things off one by one to this guy in the truck. Our appliances from our units, now they're old, but this guy's paying him, I don't know, a few $100 a set, and putting that money right in his pocket. So yeah, deep breath there. I'll give you another one. Same guy, same issue. Very similar issue.
You learned a lot. You learned a lot.
I learned
with
a lot
this one
from this guy. Absolutely. And most of our construction management process is from lessons learned from this one guy.
You need to thank him someday. No kidding.
Yeah. He was charging. This is actually something that I think is semi-common from the shadier people in the industry, in that he was charging our contractors pay to play, meaning every bid that they were submitting us, let's say they said they were going to do the labor and all the work for $1,000, he had them put $1,200 on their bid. Okay, so we were paying $1,200 for that work. They were getting $1,000. He was collecting the $200 in between as a middleman. Whoa. Yeah. So that is a big no-no for us, of course. So this guy who we were paying a full-time salary, right, fully employed,
he's just creating his own bonuses.
He's just selling appliances on the one hand and marking up our units out of the other. And so, yeah, that was we only found that out because I had a good relationship with the actual contractors, because I started going to the property more and more. And so I actually made it a point to take the site staff out for lunch. And then the next day I was there, I took the contractors out for lunch, like, "Hey, you guys have been doing good work." And they were talking about it. And unfortunately, we found out about this after this guy had been let go for all the other reasons. And they said, "Yeah, that guy, we never liked that he was marking up our invoices." And they kind of just said it. And I'm like, I'm so lost. What are you even talking about here? Marking up invoices. And sure enough, that's what he was doing. And he was making, I don't know, 15, 20% markup on everything, and putting that right in his pocket. So don't do that.
I just can't, I can't wrap my head around this. Yeah. That's what I'm having a hard time with my words, because I'm thinking, how does somebody even do this? I'm a person of words too, so that's a big deal.
Right. So I would say, what we took from that is I have frequent contact with all of my contractors, even though they have, like, my property managers manage them. I want to know who's on site, and I actually usually have the cell phone numbers, like, of the guys that are doing a lot of work for us. Sure. Not just like one-off, plumber comes in,
subs and stuff like that.
But yeah, but like the main guys that are working on our properties, and certainly when I visit, I usually pull them aside, like, "Hey, how's it going? Can I get you anything? Are things going well? How's the management team?" And you just kind of build a rapport and a conversation, and frequent visits, because if you're not there, you're definitely not seeing that kind of stuff. that's happening behind your back. So you have to be at your property. If you're investing out of state, especially, you have to go, every 4 or 6 weeks. If you're in the heavy renovation, like we've done in the past, I say 4 to 6 weeks is the maximum you should not be on your property as the asset manager. If it's stabilized and, you're kind of just leasing and running the property, you could probably go a little bit longer, but in that heavy renovation plan, you got to be there.
That is super, super powerful. Okay, as we wrap up, I want to know, how do you keep you went through all of that and you're a grounded person, but how did you keep your head straight with all of that going on? Or did you, and what, if you didn't, what did you learn from it? What would you pass on? Because that would do a mind bend on a lot of people.
You almost just have to laugh about it. I mean, at some point you got to give them credit for the ingenuity and to figure this out. And I mean, I appreciate a good hustle. I don't like that I was the one being hustled and taken advantage of, but you have to say he figured out an inefficiency in the system and he took advantage of it. And so, I mean, I tip my hat to that, to the entrepreneurial spirit. I'm going to change my process, and I view it as, again, like this is on me and our team for not catching it. Right. And so all I can really do, because there's no real proof, there's only word of mouth. There's no like paper trail that I could ever go sue this guy for. So all I can do is change my processes and learn from it for the next time around. And, for me, it's like, if I can't change it, then I can't really get too worked up about it, and we can just do better next time.
That's not worth it. I won't lie. I face this parenting all the time. I have a really, really smart child in my life, and it's just like, how did he find that loophole? What on earth? Man,
you got to tip the cap and be like, hey, you figured it out.
We do. We look at each other like, wow, he's really smart. He could go places in life. Let's just make sure he stays on the right side of everything.
That's right. Let's hope he's not selling appliances out of someone's apartment.
He's a good kid. He won't be selling appliances. All right. A final question. This has been absolutely insightful. And I know that you were excited, because I'm so excited to have an asset manager just talk about this, because I am confident everybody listening can now have so much more respect for the asset manager and the responsibilities that entails. It's intense. There's a lot riding on you guys. So, wow, I think I just totally lost my question for you. Here it is. So moving forward, as we go deeper, we're only 6 weeks into 2021 right now when we're recording this. So I'm just wondering, what do you see some of the challenges that asset managers are going to face this year, post-pandemic recovery? Who knows what this year brings and stuff, but what are you kind of preparing for, and how are you doing that?
The biggest thing that is on my mind every day is collections right now. And it's been since almost a year now, is on a daily, weekly basis, how much money are we bringing in? Because at some point, there's talk of cancel rent and this and that, and people don't, people are running out of time and energy and money with this pandemic. And I'm hopeful that there'll be some support for them, and there have been some good state support agencies, but at the end of the day, we have very large delinquent balances on a lot of our properties. Now we're doing very well on some properties, and other properties just seem to get hit hard. And so the biggest challenge, I think, this pandemic is not over, and is not, the financial effects are going to be felt for at least another year, I think, if not longer. Mm-hmm. And so there's a concern of federal eviction moratorium that might go to September or longer, they're talking about right now. But I'm hopeful that with any kind of eviction moratorium, there will be additional support. Because we as asset managers still have to pay to fix the plumbing and employ our maintenance guys and keep these properties running, whether they're paying rent or not.
And have so that's sort safety lights on, and there's
absolutely
a lot going on that
I can't provide a nice quality property if there's no money coming in. And so I'm concerned about collections, as our lenders, as our investors. And so we're very, very hyper focused on that. We are also trying to be forgiving, and we're trying to work with our tenants. So if a tenant will work with us, and that means communicate, and make payments where they can, then I'm very happy to work with them. We have a lot of tenants that just don't answer the phone, don't answer the door, close the blinds when you show up, and that's very tough. So even for those tenants, we offer them, letters of like, hey, you know what? We will forgive your entire past due balance. Just drop your keys off and walk away, right? And so we're trying to forgive a lot of past due, and just trying to bring in very well qualified tenants, so that at least if I'm placing a new tenant now, they've gone through my manager screening process and hopefully can keep paying over the next few months. But a lot of the inherited tenants we have, it's a mix. And so we're just trying to work with them. We're trying to incentivize. We're trying to give away, gift cards and incentives for on-time payment, and just trying to get creative about it. But that's my biggest concern is collections and delinquency over the next few months.
Yeah, definitely. Have the incentives been effective? Have you been able to kind of create some metrics on that?
Not really, honestly. There hasn't been too much. At one point, we did a 15% discount for anyone who paid before the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a good amount of tenants take advantage of that. But when you compare that to other months, it looks like we just gave a 15% rent discount, and we ended up losing more money that month than other months.
Oh,
so,
interesting.
We try things and see what works, but TV giveaways, gift card giveaways, we've tried a bunch of that. Does not really seem to be working. But I will say there are a lot of good tenants out there and are trying really hard. And again, if they're communicating with us and working with us, then we will work with them, and we give breaks and we give support, and we're not charging late fees and all of that. And we're just really trying to get everyone through it. But it's going to be a tough few months still.
Yeah. And going into, I just think it's like you said, it is going to be tough. It's going to be interesting, but I'm reading this book right now, The Obstacle is Away, and I highly recommend it to anybody listening. We've gone through so much in 2020. 2021 is going to have its own challenges, but like you said, when we first began this interview, is there's always something. There's always going to be something. And so it's just a matter of figuring out how to work through that something that's happening at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's always a fire, literally and figuratively.
Right.
I mean, you can have your best performing property and, this just happened this week, great performing property, 2 people who are not tenants, not at all related to anyone on your property, get into a fight on your property. How or why they were there, you don't know. One of them gets very, very injured. Right now, there's police and news talking about your property when you had no control over why or how they were there. They were not your tenants or residents, and you just have to deal with it. I mean, there's some things, like I said earlier, are just out of your control. If you can't change it, you just have to roll with it and figure out the best plan moving forward.
I love it. You're awesome, Justin.
Oh, you're awesome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I appreciate your time. There might be something that I haven't asked, or that you're like, I really want people to understand this. Now is your final moment.
Great ending question. No, I mean, just have a plan before you get into any multifamily property. These are businesses that you're buying. You're buying a property, you're buying a business. And who would buy a business without a business plan? Make sure that you've thought through risks and contingencies and that you're well funded before you get into it. And make sure that you vetted it with some people that are more experienced than you, so that you don't get into as much trouble, at least at the outset.
Because you're going to get into something. That's just
you're always going to get into something, for sure.
Right. All right. If you would love to connect more with Justin, you definitely need to. If you really want to learn more about asset management, he has a fantastic podcast that is on this specific topic. Give it a plug.
All right. So the podcast is True Multifamily. We speak all about asset management. I have awesome people doing similar things to what I do. Come on and tell us a true multifamily story where we can learn from their wins or their failures and successes and hardships. And the guests I've had have been incredible. They're so open and willing to share from their tough lessons. A lot of what I shared with you today. So True Multifamily, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. TrueMultifamily.show is the website. I would love for you guys to check it out.
That's fantastic. And is that the best way for them to also connect up with you?
Absolutely. So True Multifamily on Instagram. I'll hit you right back.
Fantastic. I hope that you enjoyed all of these cautionary tales. Actually, they're not tales, they're real life stories, lessons learned the hard way. So use them to your benefit. Make sure that you go and you check out everything that Justin has going on and continue your path to freedom, because it's just every one step and you are there to the life of your dreams. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. This episode was brought to you by 3 Keys Investments. They are dedicated to helping people like you, you, my awesome listeners, develop passive income and legacy wealth through multifamily investing. Feel free to check out their website, 3keysinvestments.com, to see if there is an offering that will help your portfolio grow and meet all of your needs. If you haven't already rated, reviewed, subscribed, liked, all of those bells and whistles, I would be absolutely honored if you would do that for Ask Me How I Know. Thanks again, and go make it a great day.